Hello and welcome to Films and That. My name's Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
Today, Sam, what are we looking at?
Today it's the Ballad of Narayama by Imamura Shôhei.
And why did you pick this one?
Because it asks a lot of questions about life that nobody wants to ask. And I find that really interesting.
Okay, cool. Let's take a look.
The Ballad of Narayama examines an age-old custom in a remote village in Japan, voluntary euthanasia of the elderly. It's a cold, honest depiction of a society coping with nature's harsh laws.
This review contains spoilers. It follows this small, poor farming village, but the general conceit is that they're so poor they constantly have to balance who's eating the food and how much food is being produced. Mm-hmm. So one of these things is that they don't like when kids are being born because it's just another mouth to feed. But then the flip side of that is the elderly, once they get to the age of 70, then they go up to a mountain and they get left there to die, basically, because there just isn't enough food to feed them.
There is a sort of two sides to it, but there's a kind of a conservative element of this society of rigidly sticking to its traditions and beliefs. There is another side, people who just can't accept the harsh reality. One side is obviously held in high esteem and the other side is shamed.
So it's a pretty harsh film.
Yeah,
lots of
up in the mountains.
Yeah.
It opens with wonderful sweeping shots of mountains and snow.
Yeah, and there's this looming thing over the entire film because Grandma, who is the main character, I would say.
Granny Orin, they call her.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's the head of this household that we're focusing on. And it's the film basically about her last year, her tying up her affairs because she's 69, so 70 next year. She's going to go away and she's going to die. So it's about her making peace with her family and helping them get through certain issues. So it is an ensemble cast, we should say, with lots of different characters.
Yeah, but you do get introduced to other families. I think the reason why there's such an ensemble cast is because they're really hammering home this idea of the sort of society that they built there, and they want to show you how that society operates. The
first half an hour is just getting to know all the characters, I would say. And it does a good job of doing that. It does a good job of setting up each character as individual people with individual personalities. There's a grandson who's always going on about his granny's teeth or something. He's obsessed with how many teeth she's got. Yeah, it's this film is an advert for the dangers of good dentistry. Apparently, she grows old and everybody makes fun of her for having good teeth, which in any other society would be a great thing, obviously. It's interesting the way I think that they approach this subject, because there is humour and then there's moments that sort of totally flip it on its head and the moments are almost shocking, almost horrific. One of the characters of the main family, the smelly guy, we'll call him. He spots a dead baby, basically, in a field, which is obviously quite a horrific sight. And without sort of being horrified by it, he's just annoyed by it. And he goes over to the other family and says, "Don't throw your dead children in our field," But then just before that, they're just sort of joking around about how he's smelly. Yeah. And there's sort of a light-hearted aspect to that, It kind of felt like a soap opera to me, watching it, particularly the first half of the film, because you're just going around these characters talking about their daily lives, and there doesn't seem to be a lot going on, but there's this, like you said, this horrific undertone going through it. Yeah. These horrific things just happen as a matter of fact within their society, and they have to happen. The second act... It's not just the interesting stuff, is it? But it's the shocking stuff in there, I think, as well. One plot line is where the son who goes on about the granny's teeth all the time, he marries someone who their family is found out to be stealing or something. Yeah, right? Yeah. Which is, in this society, this small society with barely any food, is the biggest crime you could commit, basically. Once it's found out that these people have stolen. I think it's Granny Orin who kind of makes the decision to kill all these people and bury them alive. Oh yeah, which is a whole family, children and all, which is it's so horrific. I don't think it's Granny Orin who makes a decision, but she's clearly a part of it. I always saw her as the head of the decision-making process for a lot of the village. She tells the daughter-in-law to go back home and look after your family right before they all get buried alive. Yeah. She's certainly of that family. I feel like she's in charge there.
So she is involved somehow. She knows that's going to happen, so she is involved somehow, but it's never really made clear, I guess.
So initially, she does actually accept the possibility of her son marrying this person and having another great-grandchild. When she sees what this person that his son has married is like, and you know what the family have done, and I think she does steal. She is seen stealing herself.
Yeah.
This girl, she's like, right, no, she's dead to me.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
It ties into the whole thing. You've got to make these difficult decisions and do horrific things, otherwise you aren't going to survive as a culture. So if they didn't do that, then it is potentially going to happen again, and it's potentially going to cause less food for everyone else, and potentially cause the whole village to suffer and maybe even die. So you kind of, there is that morality there of, should we be doing this, but then this is going to happen. And I like those hard decisions. I think those hard decisions is what makes drama interesting. But it's interesting that the film deals with these subjects, and I don't think I've seen a film that has done something similar. Have you seen any film that...
Well, just the original.
Does that do it in the same way, though?
No, tonally it's not, no. But it does, actually a lot of the same things do happen. But tonally, it's a very different film. It's more of its era. It's more that kind of Mizoguchi, kabuki theatre feel to it.
The teeth smashing scene is pretty horrific. That was the most horrific thing I
It was, and it's in both the original and this film. Again, tonally very different. In the original, it's framed as a very horrific thing, like a very shocking thing. In this film, it's horrific, but it's almost slightly casual in tone.
Yeah, well, she's kind of proudly showing it off to other people that she's got no teeth anymore. She did this to kind of as an aging thing, because the teeth are a sign of youth.
Yeah.
And because she was getting old, and she wasn't losing her teeth, she kind of forced the issue.
In fact, there is another character, a female character, who's at one point thinks she's too ill and thinks she's going to die of illness, and she's like really unhappy about it, isn't she? She's like, I wish I could have gone up the mountain like you. Oh, well, there's another bit where they build a coffin for her. You remember this? They build a coffin for her. They said, right, Granny Orange's family, it's your turn to build a coffin. They're like, okay, they build a coffin, and then they go around to say, oh, she's dead now, let's go and put her in the coffin. And she just walks out. And it's just doing housework. You're like, I thought you were dead.
Ninepence. I'm not dead. What? Nothing. Here's your ninepence.
There's another bit that's it's humorous and horrible, is the smelly son of this family. There's a rumour he's sleeping with the neighbour's dog. Unfortunately, we have to briefly witness, obviously staged, him trying to have sex with the neighbour's dog, which felt... I didn't think I needed that.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean about it being quite brave. It like, brave to show those things. And doesn't the dog kind of snub him as well? At one point,
the dog snubs him.
Well, at one point, there's a line that says even the neighbour's dog won't sleep with you because you smell so bad or something. So going back to the scene where they get buried alive, that family, there's a bit of dramatic music as it all happens. But then once they're being buried, there is the music just cuts out basically. And it's just, there's no music, it's just the sound of these shovels putting the soil onto these people, and it goes on for quite a long time, and it becomes a lot more horrific once the music dies down. It becomes a lot more real for me.
Up until that point, they are manipulating you a little bit with the music. So they just want to contemplate it, let you sit there and contemplate it. It's like that scene in 12 Years a Slave, when the main character's being hung for like quite what seems like forever.
Yeah, it's to force you to live with those actions and those decisions. So it's not going to show you it and then cut away quickly so you can forget about it. It's particularly the buried alive thing. You know, it's horrific, and you've got to stay with those decisions you've made.
Yeah, and that is actually one of the big differences from the original. The one thing you take away from this in comparison is that this one doesn't shy away from the cruel stuff. They just sort of witness the whole family being taken away, and it's much more somber and quiet, and it's just like there's just a line that we won't talk about this family again. And it's treated like that. You don't see the act itself. Right. It's clearly a very isolated community. I feel that's really established at the beginning when there was the helicopter shots over the mountains. Yeah. It like goes for a long time, and there's no civilization.
The last third of the film, when they go up the mountain, there's next to no dialogue when they do that, is there? Because Granny can't talk while she's going up the mountain. The whole thing is just in silence. And it's just a really interesting use of sound, because the lack of it really separates you out from when they were at the village and there was lots of chatter and there's lots of people talking. It really kind of isolates you on that mountaintop, I think.
And it puts you in her side as well, I think, that she's clearly really committed to it, even if it's such a horrible concept, you know, it is what she wants. She doesn't really even commit suicide, just has to sort of surrender to the elements.
He keeps on saying, "Oh, you're very lucky that it's snowing," which I kind of thought was, "Oh, you're gonna freeze to death rather than starve to death."
Yeah,
as a kind of and she's really at peace with it, because she even picks out a spot amongst these skeletons where she's gonna kind of finally rest.
It's a very cruel image of the whole thing, you know. It's very hard because it is, for them, it's such an honor, you know, and they don't shy away from that this is the pinnacle of your achievement in your life. She is essentially doing what the most honored person could do in this village, but it's such a horrific thing.
There's a really tender moment when her son doesn't want to leave, and she kind of forces him to leave her, basically. But then he goes down the mountainside, and we see the antithesis of this, where the elderly person doesn't want to do this, but then the child is making them do it. And it's just, that is such a horrific moment. And it's such a grueling journey, and it takes so long, and it's so brutal. It really puts you in their position, I think, and it really, you're on the journey with them as they go up to the mountain.
Yeah, but it's quite somber, and the whole film I felt like was building up to that. So that's where they really make use of the visuals, you know, because up until that point you've not quite got the vistas or whatever. You've got, you know, the village that looks quite grim. There's still a lot of good imagery, but that's the point where they're really trying to sell you the film.
That is where the film really takes it up to the next level, to be honest. Because the first half of the film, I was not really enjoying it, actually, because I was like, what's going on? There's nothing happening. We're just introduced to these characters. It's kind of mundane. And then the second chunk, so the second act, basically, that's when all the kind of crazy sex stuff happens.
Not the sexy kind.
There's some very weird sex scenes.
Depicted as sort of comedic or unpleasant. Weird ones, yeah, okay. Some
of the weirdest sex scenes I've ever committed to celluloid.
Yeah.
But then the final act is where it becomes something special, I think.
Yeah.
So Sam, what did you think of this film?
I think I said this before. I kind of wanted to hate it when I first saw it. It made me a little bit angry because it was just so honest. When I look back on it, I feel like this is a really interesting film to talk about, and actually, it's also a film I think that everybody should watch. Well, I'm not going to force anyone to, but this is a society that can't afford luxuries. You know, it's a harsh society, and the people are there to make the tough decisions, but just because they have to.
I didn't like the beginning third of the film. I got a bit bored, but there is enough in there to kind of really grab your attention and to kind of, you know, stimulate you, basically. So it is a great film, and I liked it the more towards the end. Actually, it kind of like peaked towards the end act, which I thought is the perfect kind of way to do it. I think you set up your characters. There's some interest in the middle, and then you've got this nice payoff at the end. It's quite well constructed in that sense. Okay, that's it for this time on Films and That. Thanks for watching and subscribing. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Wah!